What happens when journalism stops investigating a person and begins consuming them? What happens when allegations about one academic becomes a national spectacle? When questions about his work expand into questions about his entire biography, his character, his achievements, his race, and even whether he deserved to stand where he stood. And what happens when that person is found dead, just days after resigning from one of the most prestigious universities in the world? Jason Arday was 41 years old. May he rest in peace. He had been a professor of sociology at the University of Cambridge. In 2023, he became Cambridge's youngest Black professor. In August 2026, after weeks of intense scrutiny, Cambridge announced a new investigation into his academic qualifications and honorary appointments. Arday resigned soon afterwards. Days later, he was found dead at his home in South London. Police said his death was unexpected but not believed to be suspicious. We must be precise here. No official source has established the cause of death, and we cannot claim that media coverage caused it. But we can ask a different question. What responsibility does a press culture have when relentless scrutiny becomes part of the environment surrounding a person's final days? This is not a story about shielding powerful people from legitimate questions. It is a story about proportion. It is a story about race, class, institutional accountability, and the British media. And it is a story about what happens when a person alleged mistakes become useful to a much larger political argument. Welcome. This is Majesty Sussex Report, and I'm Antonio. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time here with us. I'll see you right after the intro. Thank you for sticking around. Today's topic is a bit heavy, actually very heavy. But I'm just going to jump into it, okay? Jason Arday's resignation followed a series of reports and online allegations concerning plagiarism in his PhD thesis and other academic work. Questions were also raised about statements concerning his academic achievements, fundraising, qualifications, academic appointments, and other elements of his public biography. The first major public challenge appears to have come from Nathan Kovnas, a philosopher and former Cambridge academic, who published a lengthy online critique alleging plagiarism and questioning aspects of Arday's stated achievements. The BBC described Kovnas as a self described race realist. I'm not sure what race realist means, but who has been dismissed from Cambridge in 2024. That detail really matters, not because it automatically invalidates every criticism Kovnas made, but because Responsible journalism requires audiences to understand who is making an allegation, what their background is, and whether they have a personal, ideological, or political interest in the dispute. The allegations did not remain confined to an academic process, which it should have. They moved rapidly into the media. The Guardian reported that Arday faced scrutiny over plagiarism, claims, and a long list of questions about his backstory, endurance running, football, charity fundraising, academic positions, qualifications, and authorship. CNN reported that Cambridge had opened an investigation into new information about his academic qualifications and honorary appointments. Cambridge later said that the findings would inform a review of its process for appointing senior academics and its research misconduct policy. Arday had denied wrongdoing. He said previous investigations had found no plagiarism or academic misconduct, while other reporting noted that Liverpool John Moores University had attributed issues in his doctoral work to honest and reasonable error rather than upholding a plagiarism finding. That means there were several distinct questions. What precisely had been established? What remained an allegation? What claims had already been investigated? Which new claims required examination? And was the public coverage accurately distinguishing between evidence, disputed interpretation, and political commentary? Those distinctions are not technicalities. They are the difference between journalism and a public prosecution.
Position. As someone that worked with Dr. Arday, previously I was a BAME racial equality advocate and I saw the amazing work that he did. What has happened today, the last few weeks, is actually really, really, really sad. The way that he has been hounded, mocked, bullied by the media honestly needs to stop. When they say be kind, be kind, be kind, they honestly don't mean it to black people. Why are black people, black professors, held to such an impossibly high standard that no one can achieve? Unfortunately, even before he was appointed, people already felt that he did not deserve his position. He was subject to such scrutiny the moment that he got into Cambridge. People were already questioning his work before they even read his work. How is that fair? People already felt like he did not deserve his position. People did not want to see a black person be one of the youngest and most talented professors at Cambridge. The reason that this story was on national news headlines, in magazines, articles around the world, is because he is black. He is a person of color, and the right-wing media looked at that and seized that opportunity to tear this man down. They felt that he did not deserve his position, and from the moment he was appointed, there were already orchestrated attempts to remove him from his position. This is not right. How can we as a society keep allowing things like this to happen? The news outlets, the media need to be held to account because this should not be happening. This was a targeted attempt to bully, harass, demean this man, remove his qualifications, remove everything that he'd worked so hard for. It's really sad that black people in education and media are subject to such racial abuse, and his story just goes to show that racial abuse is increasing. Even with the unfortunate news that came out today, people have not rested. I went back to my old uni pages, where he was a professor, and I was looking at the comments, and already I saw racial abuse. People are saying the most disgusting, vile things about him. which just goes to show why he was held to such an impossible standard. We know it was. We know it was because he was black. We know it was because he was a person of color, and people could not stand to see him in such a high position.
The public controversy appears to have gained momentum after Nathan Kovnes published his online critique. From there, journalists and newspapers amplified different elements of the story. The Guardian reported that the scrutiny began with plagiarism allegations and then expanded into questions about many other aspects of Arday's life and career. The expansion is central to this story. Look, a fair investigation into a thesis is one thing, but a campaign examining every childhood claim, every sporting achievement, every charity figure, every professional title, and every element of a person's identity is something much, much larger. At what point does accountability becomes humiliation? At what point does public interest becomes public appetite? And who decides when the story is over? There is a great article in Feminegra, and I will include the link in the comment section um, for you to link into and have a read. What the article basically it makes a comparison, or sorry, part of the article makes a comparison with the case of William O'Reilly, a white Cambridge history professor. According to the article, O'Reilly was found to have copied substantial portions of undergraduate essays into published work. A university tribunal described the conduct as ne- negligent, negligent, sorry, um, rather than deliberate, and he was allowed to remain in his post. The article says the case received limited coverage compared with the national attention directed at Arday. Now, just my own caution. You know, we always have to be careful when we're making comparison, right, and coming up with conclusions, because situations many times some of the underlying things could be the same, the foundation basically, and um but the other elements might be different, right? So just my own thing when I'm making comparisons or doing anything like that. I tend to be very careful in how I treat it. But the comparison raises a legitimate question. Why do some cases remain within academic circles while others become national morality plays? Why? Hmm? The issue is not whether a black professor should receive less scrutiny. The issue is whether race changes the scale, the tone, and political meaning of that scrutiny. Arday's case was not reported solemnly as a dispute about academic standards. It became connected to arguments about diversity hiring, as they say, wokeness, and it so irritates me how that word has been corrupted, right? Merit, and whether black academics had been promoted beyond their ability. I mean, I spoke about this, I think, in the last podcast. Because anytime a person of color, a black person, achieves anything, they need to justify, oh, how did he or she get there? Because it couldn't be just by their own merits. They have to find the guilt. Where can we find that thing that then we can justify, oh, that is how he or she got there? Not because they studied, not because they worked hard, not because of any of those circumstances, not because that they're intelligent. but there are other factors that they need to find, pinpoint, right? And and that is a major shift, a major shift. If a scholar is accused of plagiarism, the relevant questions concern the work. The work. What was copied? Was it acknowledged? What did the investigation find? What sanction is appropriate? But if the case becomes evidence that diversity itself is fraudulent, then an individual accusation has been transformed into a political weapon. One person's alleged misconduct is made to stand in for an entire group. That is not accountability. That is racial generalization. The Daily Mail, or as we like to call it, the Daily Fail column by Amanda Platell, explicitly compared Jason Arday with Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. Patel wrote that both had presented dramatic personal stories and argued that both wanted money and fame. The column described Arday's accounts of hardship, achievement, and sporting accomplishment in highly dismissive and mocking terms. The article did not merely examine the academic allegations. It placed Arday and Meghan into a shared narrative: ambitious black or mixed race. These were people that were seeking attention. These were people that were in the public eye and or are public figures who, in the column, and the way they framed it, constructed exaggerated identities for personal achievement. Because you see, sometimes when you tell people who have never and will never understand what microaggression is, understand that you've been living since birth with microaggressions, that you've become so adept that you're able to notice it, you're able to ignore it because it almost becomes the same thing as breathing. So when you tell people or you try to explain to them and they've never experienced anything like that, they go, "What are you talking about? Oh, come on, you're exaggerating." I told a story a little while back about my cousin and one of his friends. They were teenagers at the time, coming back from New Year's celebration. And this was a public New Year's celebration in the city. They were walking back, and a police car kind of started to follow them. My cousin was with his friend, as I said. His friend lived in a very well to do neighborhood, and my cousin was staying over. So they police car stopped them, and immediately my cousin just put his hands up. And his friend, who was white, his friend said, "Why are you stopping us? What's the reason?" And just started to mouth off, basically, at the police, at the cops. Now, I don't remember well the rest. This middle part. All I can say is that my cousin ended up on the ground while his friend was still arguing as to, "I want your badge number. I want this. I want that. What's the reason? I'm calling my mom. My mom is a lawyer." And they were eventually let go because number one, he lives in the neighborhood. And the as the cop car pulls off, my cousin's friend got a little bit angry at my cousin. Remember, they're teenagers. He goes, dude, what's wrong with you? Like you became such a wimp, such a wuss. Like dude, like you just sort of and my cousin was trying to explain to him and said, listen, I cannot do what you just did. I don't have the right to do that because tomorrow my mom might be burying me, man. That's the truth. And his his friend couldn't completely understand, like, what do you mean? What exactly do you mean? Because the way his friend saw cops, he sees the cops as, well, a sense of security. While black and brown people, we don't see cops as a sense of security because we know what consequences exist. Because I've been stopped, right? Funny enough, in the same neighborhood, in the same neighborhood, and I was asked, where do I live? So I was house sitting at the time, and I give them the address. I said, "But how long have you been living here?" And I looked at the and I'm still kind of walking, right, like really, and then eventually I stopped. But I was like, "What do you mean? How long I've been living here?" I said, "I give you my address already. I don't understand. Like, why do you want to know how long I've been living here?" And he didn't ask me anything else. And I continued. I said, "Can I go?" And he said, "Yes." I continued to walk. I got to the end of that one street. I made a right. They continued to follow me. And then I got to the house, opened the door, went in, turned on the lights, and I just looked, and they were just parked outside on the street, and I just pulled the curtains and went along doing my stuff. But at the same time, I was. I mean, I didn't have a horrible experience, but I was, when you experience it, it does something to you. It really does. So in her article, going back to that, it's the way in which the framing is done, right? Megan has experienced years of hostile tabloid and commentary coverage, much of it focused not only on her public conduct, but on her character, family, appearance, motives, and credibility. And here on Majesty Sussex Report, it's one of the things that I try to call out and to highlight, because what the media, especially in the UK, what they do, the things that they do, is just this very, I don't know what the only word that's coming to my is evil. Evil. It's distorted. It's wicked. It's evil. There's a dark force to what they do, because they're looking to destroy you as a person. When when they won well, they didn't win the case. When the judge said there wasn't enough, to him, enough evidence, proof, right, in Harry and Prince Harry and the other claimants' case, they were quick in that 60 minutes Australia piece to say, "Oh, it's freedom of press, and they don't like us holding the powerful accountable." And no, my dear, because you don't hold the powerful accountable, because most of you are in bed with the politicians. Most of you are in bed with the um, a- a- aristocratic class. So I mean, there is a certain um, former, I don't know, editor, right, who was also on GB News, who there's just an array of accusations, an array of evidence of things that this evil person, evil, dark spirited person has done. And even though all of that came out, not a thing has happened to him. Not a thing. He went on his vacation in New Zealand, came back, has his YouTube channel, and every single day just spews out hatred, misinformation, lies, lies, allegedly. And here is the thing, and I've said this many times: people like Megan, any person of color that reaches a certain level in their career, any person of color that is in spaces that was not originally designed for us, we end up being, in many ways, a symbol, the first to do this, the first to get there, the first. And they will do any and everything to use you as that symbol to destroy you. Because the message is, don't you dare come back here. Don't think for 1 minute that you belong. Not for 1 minute. Not for one. Right? Because the comparison between Megan and Arday is not necessarily persuasive in every detail. Not at all. Their careers, circumstances, and public roles are very different. But the comparison reveals a recurrent media pattern: the suggestion that Black people, Black and brown people who achieve elite status must have manipulated the system, exaggerated their background, or obtained opportunities they did not deserve. That's what they're absolutely trying to say and do. And many times we have said it here. How dare she get into that position, excel doing the job, and then because of the treatment of that institution, she decides, no, 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 this is not for me. How dare you walk away from it, right? The question becomes not what happened. It becomes, how did someone like that get there? How did they? I mean, how many times have you not read, listened, seen an article, insinuation, or whatever, that Megan used her art of, you know what, that you know, she has a special thing that she does that drives men kind of crazy, and you can guess what that is. I mean, come on. That is why they were out there trying to get co-stars or whatever, pay them money to say, "Oh, I had an affair with her. Oh, I slept with her. Oh, I this da da da." Grotesque, absolutely grotesque. I mean, I don't care whether a person did sleep with 100 people or 200 or one or four. I don't care. None of my damn business. Why, if the discussion is about your ability, people need to go into your bedroom and know what you do in your bedroom? The former Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, famously said, "There is no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation." So, why is the press, why would the media need to know any of that, whether you're famous or not? I mean, really. And that is why many times, language does matter. As I've been doing this sort of series or topics on media literacy and how media, consciously and unconsciously for us, gets into our brain and the manipulation happens, the language we use matters. Calling a person a liar, fraud, narcissistic, or imposter is not the same as reporting that a claim has been challenged, right? Describing allegations is journalism. Declaring a person's entire identity fraudulent requires a much higher standard.
Jason Arday was found dead just a few hours ago. This is how many stories the Daily Telegraph published about a young black academic in the UK accused of plagiarism, and they have made this into a massive culture war DEI story. They published 33 articles in 16 days. On some days, they published up to 4 articles. Here's a list of some of the outlets that I decided just to choose and see how many articles that they've written in the space of 2.5 weeks about a story about a young black academic who tonight has been found dead in Battersea in London. They haven't officially released the cause of death, and they've said that there's no foul play. People can make their own assumptions until the official statement comes out. But the Daily Telegraph, as I said, 33 articles. The Spectator, 30 articles in 2.5 weeks about a young black academic who's been accused of plagiarism. The Times, 41 articles. GB News, 15, but they don't publish as much written stuff. They mentioned him literally every hour on TV. Daily Mail takes the crown, 53. Of course, it's the Daily Mail. And the BBC, 15 times. Why has a story about a young black academic being accused of plagiarism, not even found guilty, from a story which originally was published by a guy on Substack who has previously been accused and actually had his relationship severed with certain organizations because he's promoted literally eugenic ideas about racial hierarchies and hereditary intelligence? That is the guy who originally broke this story on Substack that there's possible plagiarism with this young black academic in Cambridge. And we've got this. We've got non-stop back-to-back coverage, everything on every social media platform, on every TV, right-wing media outlets, centrist media outlets. I've even seen The Guardian covering this multiple times. Why did it need this much attention? Really? With everything else going on in the world, it needed this much attention, and now a guy is dead. Right now, journalists are on social media defending their journalism, talking about public interest. I've seen plagiarism stories get covered before. One-day stories, they're forgotten. Okay, they are forgotten. Tell me why we've needed 2.5 weeks of some outlets publishing up to 4 articles a day on this story. It's because they're racist. It's because they're pushing the whole, everything that's wrong with the country is because of black and brown people, immigrants, and DEI. Nothing else. The country is literally on fire this week. We're running out of water. Our crops are half the size of what they should be. And there's so much stuff going on around the world. But this story has got more coverage than all of these topics. Consistently. Up to 4 articles a day, The Telegraph. Up to 4 articles in a single day. Why? Why? You know why.
Jason Arday, who passed yesterday, had nearly 250 articles written about him over the last 3 weeks. 250 articles. The British press hounded him. This is all over plagiarism. Obviously, he did something wrong. But you have people who have done so much worse, but they don't get that same scrutiny. Are you surprised someone like Meghan Markle chose to leave? And now do you see the reason why? And what they have in common?
This controversy also belongs to a larger history of British press behavior. The British tabloid system, as a matter of fact, the British press in general, has often treated public humiliation as entertainment. The target may be a politician, a celebrity, migrant, a royal, an academic, or a private citizen. They have no boundaries whatsoever. The formula is familiar. Find a person who attracts attention. Reduce a complicated life to a dramatic narrative. Repeat the most damaging allegations. Add ridicule and moral judgment. Invite the public to participate in condemnation. Continue until the audience loses interest, or the target breaks. That final outcome is rarely acknowledged as part of the process. The press says it is merely reporting public interest, but public interest can be manufactured through repetition. The more newspapers publish about a person, the more newsworthy the person appears. The more commentators discuss the controversy, the more the controversy seems to prove itself. This is how a media cycle feeds itself. The issue is not that newspapers should never investigate public figures. They should. Universities and public institutions must be held accountable. Claims about qualifications and research integrity deserve serious examination, but scrutiny should be evidence led, proportionate, and transparent. It should not become an excuse for mockery, racial stereotyping, or the monetization of disaster. A clear example is the column published by The Sun in December 2022, in which Jeremy Clarkson wrote about Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. The column described an intense fantasy, if we may call it that, of public humiliation and violence directed at her. It became the most complained about article ever received by the UK press regulator at the time, and The Sun later apologized. Not like they meant it, or that the UK press regulator has any real bite. Doesn't really. That episode tells us something important, though. The problem is not just only inadequate reporting or misinformation. The problem can also be the emotional culture of the coverage, the pleasure taken in imagining a woman being degraded, the invitation for readers to share that contempt and the belief that celebrity status makes cruelty acceptable. Hmm? I don't know if any of you remember, but I remember clearly these discussions taking place in articles that I had read, where because it's a duchess and because she has money, lives in a mansion, it gave, in the eyes of the public, it gave Jeremy Clarkson permission to say what he wanted to say. Also, when she spoke about mental health, they laughed at her. Laughed at her. Because, oh, well, she's rich. What does she has? She doesn't have any problems at all. Because these kind of articles are targeted to a certain socioeconomic group, a certain level of education. So when you look at yourself and you say, for example, what does she have to worry about? She has nannies. She lives in a mansion. I bet you anything she doesn't even know how to do her laundry. Oh, yes. Oh, she has mental issues. It's the same kind of propaganda that they use when they say, well, look, see, the migrant just came on a dinghy boat over the channel. And look, they are put up in the Ritz. And not only that, they're eating caviar and champagne. And they give them, by the way, £5,000 a month. Oh, I saw two of them driving a Ferrari the other day. Oh, did you hear? Their children are going to private school, only the exclusive ones. And you dum-dum, for lack of a better word, you're like, well, what the heck? I was born here. I'm living off assistance. I can't get a job. But the reality is, migrants are not getting any of that. It's all manufactured, right? When a newspaper publishes that kind of of material. It is not simply holding someone accountable. When repeatedly, they're invading the privacy of Jason, they're creating a spectacle of someone's life. And once that style of coverage becomes normalized, there is no doubt in my mind it has been normalized in the United Kingdom. None at all, not in my mind. It can be directed at almost anyone because everything is a spectacle. It's a show. Today it is Meghan. Tomorrow it is an academic. The next day it may be a migrant, a black politician, a disabled person, a protester, or somebody who does not fit the national story being promoted by the press. For those of you who live in the UK, have you not seen on television, have you not seen even on social media? You have these people going, well, I am British, I am English. They bring all these people from sub-Sahara, all these Africans. I don't even recognize my city anymore. All these people. Really? Really? I mean, the ignorance. Absolute ignorance.
Have you ever heard of Simon Goldhill, the University of Cambridge professor who resigned a couple of months ago after a sexual assault investigation? What about Dr. Peter Hutchinson? 10 female undergraduates made complaints against him for sexualised and sexist language. The University of Cambridge allowed him to continue in his role, but with some restrictions. When he broke those restrictions, he was permanently excluded from the university, then reappointed 2 years later, although he later resigned. What about Professor David Latchman? He presided over a laboratory that for over a decade consistently produced fraudulent research, including manipulating images and making up data. He's now the Vice-Chancellor of the University of London. Do you know who Sylvia Buffonet-Paus is? 13 papers either authored or co-authored by her had to be redacted due to data and image manipulation. She still works at the University of Manchester today. I'm guessing for 99% of you the answers were no, you've never heard of them. And I'm only picking on those 4 people due to brevity. This video could be 10 times longer. But you've all definitely heard of Jason Arday, who tragically died yesterday. Let's just assume for this mind experiment that every accusation against Arday is correct. He plagiarised his thesis, he could talk before he was 11, and he exaggerated how much money he'd raised for charity and distances walked. Do you think the media attention given to Arday's alleged wrongdoings is proportional to the wrongdoings of the academics I previously mentioned? Even after he said he couldn't handle the media attention and resigned, the media still hounded him with stories such as Arday was late for work. And if you believe that Arday's alleged wrongdoings received a disproportionate amount of media attention, why do you think Arday received the kind of scrutiny that these other academics did not?
I am specifically talking to white people, so if you're not white, this message isn't directed at you. I think we as white people need to have a serious conversation about what happened to Jason Arday. Jason became Cambridge University's youngest black professor. Then allegations of plagiarism were made against him. Now, Liverpool John Moores University, the university that awarded him his PhD, investigated those allegations and did not find academic misconduct. They concluded there had been honest and reasonable error. I'm not saying it doesn't mean anyone can't question his work, but what happened after that was absolutely vile. This didn't just stay an academic investigation. Someone within Cambridge reportedly contacted Nathan Kofnas about Jason. And if you don't know who he is, go and have a look about what he wrote. Arguing about race and intelligence. Calls himself a race realist. He's white and has argued that under what he considers true meritocracy, there would be almost no black professors in elite universities. So that's the person that somebody within Cambridge reportedly took concerns about Jason Arday to. And what did he do with that? He labelled his investigation DEI fraud and cover up at Cambridge. There it is. Jason, being black, had been dragged directly into it. The British media amplified the absolute shit out of it. Dozens of articles. And they didn't just investigate his PhD. They went through his academic work, his qualifications, his running, his fundraising, his childhood. They went through his life. And Nigel Farage, as expected, took one black man's allegations and used Jason as a token for his own little political argument about DEI, calling DEI a toxic ideology. So let's call it for what it is. It's racist. It's racism. I want white people to seriously ask ourselves something. How many white academics have faced allegations of plagiarism or research misconduct? Loads. But when a white academic is accused of something, nobody turns around and says, well, this is because you employ white people. Nobody questions whether a white person are getting positions because of their race. Nobody takes one white person's alleged wrongdoing and uses it as evidence that other white people may not deserve to be there. We're allowed to be individuals. Jason Arday wasn't afforded that. His alleged mistakes became about his blackness, became political ammunition for the right and the far right, and the British media helped turn the entire thing into a spectacle. Jason resigned from Cambridge on the 5th of August. 9 days later, on the 14th of August, Jason Arday was found unresponsive at his address. Police said his death was unexpected, but isn't being treated as suspicious. You don't need to know the cause of his death to look at how this man was treated. It was absolutely disgusting.
But there's more to all of this. The wider political environment cannot be ignored. Britain is facing serious problems: inequality, housing pressure, regional deprivation, strained public services, political distrust, and economic insecurity. But public debate is often redirected towards migrants and racialized minorities. Why? Well, because blaming people with less power is politically convenient. The public is encouraged to look downwards rather than upwards. Instead of asking who owns the newspapers, who benefits from economic policy, who has influence over government, and who profits from national decline, people are encouraged to blame Black and Brown communities for the country's problems. That is where politicians such as Nigel Farage and other right wing figures become relevant. Not because every media story is directly controlled by them, but because their political messaging can reinforce a wider climate of resentment towards migrants and racialized minorities. The media and politics can operate as an ecosystem. Politicians make inflammatory claims, newspapers then amplify them. Commentators interpret events through their lens. The public becomes angry. Politicians then point to that anger as evidence that their framing was justified. This cycle creates a permanent search for symbolic villains. And there we have Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and Jason Arday. Jason Arday became useful within the environment because his story could be presented as a warning about diversity, institutional inclusion, and Black advancement. The story was no longer just about one man. It became a referendum on whether people like him belong in elite Britain. And Meghan has faced a similar transformation. She is not treated simply as a duchess, a wife, a mother, or a media professional, an entrepreneur. She is repeatedly turned into a symbol of race, class, feminism, American influence, monarchy, immigration, and the change in Britain. That is a tremendous burden to place on any individual. There is also a structural problem. The Britain press is highly concentrated, with powerful newspaper groups exercising disproportionate influence over national conversation. That does not mean every newspaper prints the same story or that a single person controls every editorial decision. But concentrated ownership can narrow the range of narratives that receive sustained attention. It can also create a media culture where competition is based on outrage, speed, and emotional impact. So the question is not only was this article technically legal? The question is what kind of society is created when a small number of powerful media organizations repeatedly decide who deserves sympathy and who deserves contempt and who gets the benefit of the doubt. White professionals can be treated as complicated human beings who made errors, who made mistakes. But black professionals, brown professionals, can be treated as evidence of institutional corruption. White public figures can be described as flawed. Black public figures can be described as fraudulent. White people can be allowed context. Black people can be reduced just to a headline. That is the double standard we must examine, not by ignoring wrongdoings, but by asking whether the same rules are truly being applied. Let me be clear about the facts. Jason Arday faced serious public allegations concerning plagiarism and claims about his biography. Cambridge opened an investigation into his qualifications and honorary appointments, and he resigned from the university. He denied wrongdoing and pointed to previous investigations that he said had cleared him of plagiarism or academic misconduct. He was later found dead in South London. Police said the death was unexpected but not suspicious, and a file was to be prepared for the coroner. We cannot responsibly say that the press caused his death. We cannot say that he took his own life unless that is officially established. We cannot say every allegation was false. We also cannot pretend that relentless public coverage has no psychological or human consequences. When the Jeffrey Epstein scandal came out, he didn't receive, even him for his hideous crimes, the same attention and relentless, ruthless media scrutiny that Jason received. That should tell us something. The responsible position is to hold several truths at once. Public figures can be investigated. Allegations are not convictions. Institutions can make mistakes. Universities should be transparent. The press must be held to standards of accuracy and proportionality. Race can affect how a story is framed without determining whether the underlying allegation is true. A person's death should never be used as proof of a theory that has not been established. That is what responsible commentary looks like. There is a different balance here. If Arday's academic work contained plagiarism, that matters. If his biography included inaccurate claims, that matters. If Cambridge failed to verify qualifications or appointments properly, that matters. Students, researchers, and the public deserve integrity from academics and institutions. But accountability cannot mean that one person is stripped of dignity. It cannot mean that every private detail becomes fair game. It cannot mean that a person's race is repeatedly used as evidence against them, it cannot mean that a single case is weaponized to attack every Black academic, every diversity initiative, or every institution attempting to correct historical exclusions. The fairest question, I guess, is not should Jason Arday have been criticized? Of course, he could be criticized. The fairest questions are, was the evidence accurately reported? Were the allegations distinguished from confirmed findings? Were corrections and denials given equivalent visibility? Was the volume of coverage proportionate? Were comparable white academics treated in the same way? Did the reporting illuminate or illustrate the facts or encourage public hatred? Who benefited from turning this into a national spectacle?
I'm so angry right now, I'm shaking. I just heard from MP Belle Ribeiro Addy, who is the MP of Jason Arday and his family. And she's just informed me that the British media are harassing Jason Arday's grieving family. They're hounding them at home, reporting from outside their home. They've actually reported the road of his house, and they're hounding family members for comments. Like, have they not done enough? Are these people mad? Jason Arday has children. What the actual hell? Are you trying to kill his children like you killed their father? Are you people mad? Have you no compassion? What the actual hell? Have you not done enough? You hounded and smeared Jason Arday to death. And now you're doing to his family? Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's family. Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's home. Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's children now. How freaking dare you? Are you mad? I want the names of the bloody journalists, the photographers, whatever freaking TV or radio station that's participating in this monstrosity. I swear to God, we are not mad enough. Get the fuck away from them now.
Jason Arday's death leaves behind grief, uncertainty, and unanswered questions. There will be investigations into his death. There will be investigations into Cambridge appointment procedures. There may be further findings about his academic work and public claims. Those processes should be allowed to proceed. But there should also be an investigation into the culture that turns allegations into entertainment. A culture that treats some people as human beings and others as disposable symbols. A culture that can spend weeks examining the life of a Black academic while ignoring comparable cases involving white academics. A culture that tells the public to blame migrants and racial minorities for problems created by political and economic elites. A culture that attacks Meghan Sussex year after year, then acts surprised when the language becomes crueler, more personal, and more dangerous. We should not confuse criticism with persecution. We should not confuse public interest with public appetite. And we should not confuse a newspaper's ability to publish something with a moral right to publish it. So the question is not whether Jason Arday should have been above scrutiny. He should not. The question is whether he was entitled to the same humanity, the same context, and proportionality that other people received. And if the answer is no, then this is not only a story about Jason Arday. It is a story about Britain. Who gets believed? Who gets forgiven? Who gets protected? And who gets turned into a warning? There is a peculiar phenomena that's happening in many countries. And that peculiar phenomena is not looking for truth, not for justice, but for spectacle of a fall. We have become nations of spectators at the public execution of reputation. We gather, we point, we click, we share, and we tell ourselves it is accountability. It is not. It is appetite. And when the target is black or brown or a migrant or anyone who does not fit the narrow story of who belongs in elite Britain, the appetite becomes even worse. The newspapers know this. They have built empires on it. Headlines that smear, columns that mock, front pages that reduce a human life to a moral lesson for the rest of us. They call it journalism. Sometimes it is something much darker. The politicians know it too. They speak the language of resentment because it wins votes. They point to the anger in the room and say, "You see, the people are angry." But they forget to ask who lit the fire. And the public? We are not innocent. We read the stories, we share the outrage, we enjoy the humiliation until it is our turn, until it is our child, our neighbor, our friend, our family member. Jason Arday was not a saint. None of us are. He was a man who made claims, a man who faced allegations, a man who deserved a fair process, not a public trial. Megan Sussex is not a saint, you know, like none of us are. She's a woman who married into a family that could not protect her or did not want to. A woman who has been hunted for nearly a decade by the same press that now claims to speak for the people, the same press that hunted her mother in law, the same people and press that promised that they would change, they would not do what they did to Diana, to her sons, and now they're doing it specifically to one of her sons. Hmm. We must ask ourselves, what kind of society, what kind of country are we becoming when the default setting is contempt? Everyone is angry. When a black professor is not allowed to be complicated, only corrupt. When a mixed race duchess is not allowed to be human, only hated. When the same newspapers that claim to defend democracy spend their days undermining the dignity of the people who live in it. This is not journalism. It is a sickness, a deep, deep, dark sickness. And until we name it, we will keep feeding it. The next time you see a headline that invites you to despise someone, ask yourself, who benefits from my anger? Who profits from my contempt? And who is left standing when the story is over? Because one day, the story will be about you, and you will wish the crowd had been slower to judge. Thank you. Well, folks, I think this is it. I'm not gonna lie to you. This was a hard one to do, because there's so much that one can relate to, um, and also understand very much so the psychological mindset that that kind of scrutiny can put a person into, the despair. It was really tough, but I think it is worth us telling the story. It is worth us putting words and a vision of a certain point of view, because the other side, they are not lacking words, and they're not lacking, you know, promotion and influence and all of that. So I hope, I was able to do this some kind of justice, and I hope you can walk away with something learned. Um, and I don't know what else to say, to be honest. I again want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you for being just amazing human beings, amazing people, showing up, doing good, and bringing light into this world that needs it so badly. I don't care, and I'm going to say this, and I know, look, it doesn't matter what life, excuse me, what life may put in front of you. This thing that we are given, this light of life given to us by God, don't don't blow your light out. Don't turn it off. I know it may sound silly and stupid, but the sun will shine again tomorrow. It will be another day. And as long as you keep moving forward, you never know what God has got prepared for you ahead. Don't give up. Don't ever, ever give up. And trust me, I've been there. Okay, I've been where I just wanted to just throw the pillow in, and I'm consistently reminded about how precious this light is that God's given us. Um, Lately, I've noticed on another note that we've gotten a lot of French um, subscribers, and the only reason, or the only way I know that is because you leave your comments in French, which is fantastic for me. So this is for you. Merci d'avoir donné sa chance à cette chaîne. Merci d'être là. J'espère vous voir continuer à participer dans la section des commentaires, bien sûr, et à partager le podcast. Je vous remercie infiniment de faire désormais partie de ce petit train en marche. Merci de vous joindre à ce voyage. Bienvenue à bord. Now, with that said, I'm going to shush up now. Shush. Be kind to yourselves, please. Be kind to your loved ones. And to that stranger crossing your path, be kind to them too. You never know. If you want to stick around a little bit more for the song, I hope you like it. God bless. I love you all. Bye for now. Mwah.
If one person makes a mistake, we call them human, give them grace. Another person does the same, and suddenly we change the name. One gets context, one gets doubt, one gets time to work it out. One gets dragged across the page, turned from human being into rage. Same small action, different eyes, different language, different lies. One is tender, one is strange. Tell me why the judgment changed. Same act, different skin, different verdict rolling in. Who gets grace? Who gets blame? Who gets mercy? Who gets shame? Who gets context on the page? Who gets handed to the rage? Same act, different skin. Tell me, what have we become? What have we become? One hand rests upon new life, they call it love, a mother's light. Another hand does just the same, and somehow tenderness becomes a claim. One eats something green and clean, a harmless thing, or so it seems. Then change the face, rewrite the scene, and suddenly there's darkness in between. Same gesture, same ordinary day, but somebody chose a different story to say. Megaphones, deciding villains, setting tones. A question whispered late at night can wear a headline by first light. Repeat it once, repeat it 10. Invite the world to say it again. And when the target starts to bend, the story somehow does not end. Another column, another sneer, another reason we should fear. Don't call it public interest when appetite is what you fed. Don't call humiliation truth because somebody printed it in red. Same act, different skin, different verdict rolling in. Who gets grace? Who gets blame? Who gets mercy? Who gets shame? Who gets context on the page? Who gets handed to the rage? Same act, different skin. Tell me, what have we become? We may never know what happened in the final room. We may never know the weight another person carried. So don't invent the answer, don't claim what cannot be known. But we can count the headlines, we can count the laughter, we can count the laser. A human being became a spectacle, and we can ask, how much cruelty can a society normalize before cruelty becomes the society? Same act, different skin, different verdict rolling in. Who gets believed? Who the headline, there was a person. Before the scandal, there was a life who gets grace.